my blessing or whatever, acceptance or
Great.
legal.
Okay, well, recording should have started. So, Quentin, first of all, you piqued my interest when you replied to me on one of my YouTube videos. You said that you were a Bitcoin and an equity guy at the same time.
Oh, I
What?
wouldn't say I'm a Bitcoin guy, but I'm more of a gold guy. I mean, I've I wish I was more of a Bitcoin guy. I was introduced to Bitcoin, I don't even know, a long time ago at a libertarian festival that I go to, and I don't know, it was very inexpensive, and everybody was talking Bitcoin at that point. And somebody actually gave me $20, not of Bitcoin, but of Zcash, I think it was. And even the Zcash, I've lost my password, so I've lost my Zcash. But anyways, my point is, if I had if I had kept that stuff and bought any Bitcoin at that point, I would have been very happy at this point. But yeah, I mean, I own a little bit of Ethereum, I guess, and maybe that's gone up a little bit, but not. I'm not a millionaire in Bitcoin or Ethereum or what have you.
And
So,
you like gold as well.
oh, I definitely like gold. Yeah, I guess, yes. I mean, I guess I believe that gold is money. I mean, I don't know that it'll be money forever and ever, but certainly as the currencies have detached from gold, and it's got thousands of years of history of that, I think it'll be quite some time that people will still feel the connection to gold as money.
So,
So
when did you first feel that you should be owning some gold? Was this a childhood thing, or is it something which has come later in the later years?
well, it actually came my entire well, my dad back in the 70s was very disturbed by he wasn't a finance guy. He was actually a machinist in the service, and he got a degree in physics, and so he was not a dumb guy by any stretch, but he was very disappointed in the detachment of gold, the loss of connection to the gold standard. And he made some comments to me about that, and he made comments to me about inflation and so on and so forth. But that didn't trigger me. But later on, the thing that really did trigger me actually was I worked for a company, Sun Microsystems, and I don't know if you remember the dot from .com, the dot in .com.
I was a shareholder.
Yeah, and sadly I was too. I mean, happily and sadly at the same time, because when the .com crash happened, I was just, I mean, it wasn't a total surprise. At one point, I was walking down the hall with a VP, a bunch of us, 4 or 5 of us, and we were just talking about the stock price, and somebody was mentioning whatever, and the VP was like, yeah, I can't really give you any advice, but you might want to take something off the table. And we were like, what are you talking about? It's going through the roof and whatever. It was like $120 a share or something. Eventually got to 160. And he said, well, and he went over a bunch of stats about the valuation of the stock. He said, we have none of us have any idea why it's this high. It doesn't make any sense. It can't stay this way. And he was like, but I didn't talk to you. I don't want to. So at that point, it hadn't crashed yet, but that stuck in my mind. And I was lucky at that point, because as I got my stock options, what have you, I actually did an okay thing at the time. When I left the company in 2004, it wasn't 2004, 2000. I'm sorry, just before the .com crash. It wasn't clear to me that what I had done was okay, but I had taken profits and basically bought a house. And then when I left the company, I had realized how much money I had thrown away in a way by buying this house. I would have had millions of dollars, and I had a nice house, but it wasn't $1 million house. And then it crashed. But before it crashed, and I left the company, I bought the remainder of my shares. And so I forget how much I paid. It was a lot of money. And I was imagining that would grow into millions. And then then we had a .com crash and the stock went down. I eventually sold it at 10. Luckily, my shares were like at $2 and $3. So I still made money, except I paid huge taxes on it. And so ended up with like a $300,000 loss. But anyways, my point was, at that point, I said to myself, what the hell is going on? And so I decided I needed to crawl down that rabbit hole, I guess is the way I'd say it. I had some friends when I was at Sun that were worried and were gold bugs. And anyways, the bottom line is I started to try to figure out how the economic system worked. And here I am today doing a lot of research and whatever. And
I do remember Sun Microsystems. I actually owned it along with quite a few of my clients. We were lucky because every time Sun split, and they split quite a few times, I think we're talking about 1999-ish. Every time they split, we'd sell the split and keep the other half. And it took almost no time at all for the other half to reach the price you'd paid for the because obviously when it splits, it's supposed to go 50% of the price.
right.
But of course, you sell the half, and then immediately the half you've kept goes up to the old price again.
Right. Yeah, no, people, it was, I guess, just a classic mania. I mean, it was crazy. And the sad thing is, not for me, well, the sad thing is I ended up with a little bit of a loss, but I have a house. So, but the sad thing was, to me anyways, a friend of mine, and I won't mention his name was Dave, but I won't mention his name. He had been at Sun, I think a year longer than me, and maybe a year and a half. And so he had, I didn't have the initial public offering. I had the second set of shares, whatever. Anyways, he did. And when I left in 2000, just before the dot-com crash, I left in December 2000, and that happened in March of 2021. I said, Dave, how's it going? Yeah, good. I said, do you still have your shares? He said, I have every single share. I said, what are they worth? 2 million? No. 4 million? No. $8 million. I said, wow, Dave, what the hell are you doing here? Go away. Just take half of it, sell it. He said, one more split and I'm going to retire in style. Well, dot-com crash happened. The stock went down. I finally sold at 10. The stock split 10-1 negative, and he never sold his shares. The bottom line is the company finally went out of business. Oh, they got bought. Well, they went out of business. Got bought by HP. And I'm sorry, that's Apollo. I got my companies confused. But anyways, it went down to $2.50 after a 10-1 negative split. Anyway, and it had been 169. It was just. And I called Dave, a couple of years later. I said, Dave, what are you doing? You did sell your shares. He said, no, I never sold my shares. So I felt so bad. I mean,
selling anything that we own, whether it be shares or gold or Bitcoin or anything else, doesn't really matter. It's
right.
very, very hard to sell it if you're not getting the price you could have had, a higher price a month ago, a week ago, a year ago. And people just have this habit of waiting and waiting till it gets back to the previous all-time high, and then I'll sell.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have quite that problem. I mean, I knew what my shares were worth, and anyways, I sold at 10 just because, like I said, they were worth 3, and I had already paid a lot more taxes than I was going to get. Anyways, I didn't want to write it down to 0. I kind of knew what was going on at that point, so. It took a while to get from 10 to 2.5, but anyways, I think I sold it before the 10-1 negative split too, so I did okay. Right.
So. Well, you're a lucky escapee. There were so many people who rode these .coms all the way to the bottom.
My big success was that I sold along the way. I mean, I made a little bit I made 20 or 30%. You know what I mean? And I didn't make 1,000% or whatever. So. Whatever. I felt bad when I left the company. A couple of years later, I thought I was a genius. So yeah.
It kind of reminds me of a story of a client I inherited when I was working in wealth management. I must have inherited this client in about 2001 or thereabouts from a banker who'd left. Anyway, long and short of it was, I went over to London to see the lady. She was a French lady living in Knightsbridge or Kensington or somewhere like that. And I went to see her, and I went into her home, and she was wearing the shortest miniskirt you've ever seen, and very sheer tights, and she perched herself on a high stool, whereas I had a low chair. And we're looking at the portfolio, and then she suddenly points to one of the stocks, which is one of these .coms, and it's not worth a lot, a few $1,000s. And she says, "What's that? Qu'est-ce que c'est ça?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I've never heard of it, but you must have bought it." And she said, uh, in French, "Non, non, c'est mon mari. No, it's my husband who bought it." And then she yells at the top of her voice, "Chérie, tu viens tout de suite." And he comes, this French guy comes down the stairs, very, very humble. And
Yeah.
she says, "C'est toi qui m'as recommandé ça. It's you who recommended that."
Yeah.
And she was absolutely livid with him because
Yeah.
he'd put or she had put $500,000 into this
Yeah.
one stock, which was now worth a few $1,000s. Anyway, she said, tu vas payer ça. You're going to pay for that. Anyway, a couple of days later, $500,000 arrives in her account from his account at another bank.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dave wasn't that lucky anyways. I haven't talked to Dave in years, but yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a good experience for me. Anyways, at that point, when the .com crash happened, I realized I have to figure out what's going on because this doesn't make any sense. If I'm going to take care of my retirement money at all, and at that point, I really wasn't. I was, my 401k I was taken care of, but my IRAs and stuff like that, I had an advisor. And anyway, so I just needed to figure out what was going on. I guess the engineer in me just decided I can't be out of control like this. I have to appreciate what's going on. So anyway, so so that's what got me into gold. And I didn't jump right into gold, but I think the sort of the looking at the history of the economic system and again, what happened, my dad had planted in my mind this problem in with disconnecting from gold. And so, yeah. So anyways, that's how I'm certainly no expert in any of this stuff, but I think most people in the United States anyways have no clue about money and anything. I don't know what I mean, I guess I didn't either. You know what I mean? To me, until inflation started to happen in the 70s, I guess that's when that was before I had my revelation. But I mean, I grew up and, went to school anyways in the 70s. And at that point, inflation piqued my interest because it seemed such a horrible thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, I guess way back then I had made a connection to curiosity about money. So, I mean, not just saving it. Well, I was always a saver, and it just killed me that just, what is this inflation stuff? It's just killing my, I wanted to buy a car and now it wasn't a great car, but you know what I'm saying.
It just costs more every year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When did you first buy your first gold coin? Was it a coin you bought to start with, or how did you get into it?
Actually, interestingly enough, the first gold that I bought was in an allocated account. An unallocated account at Everbank, and then I just took delivery of it a few years later. So, so technically, I bought some coins and a couple of bars, because when you took it from unallocated to allocated and took delivery, you could decide what you wanted to take. So I didn't actually buy my first gold coin directly. I mean, I bought it through an online account, and then just took delivery of it. But my first actual gold coin, where I went out specifically to buy it, was probably at a local, I think might have actually been the local jewelry store up here, who deals with coins and all kinds of coins. But actually, my first coin was probably silver. Now that I think of it, I think I got it at PorcFest, the first one I went to. PorcFest is a libertarian camping conference, if you want to call it, up here in northern New Hampshire. Anyways, there were a lot of people, and a lot of libertarians are into gold and silver and Bitcoin and everything else. And so I probably bought my first, I think it was probably silver coin at PorcFest. So I don't know how many years ago that was. Not a lot. PorcFest is going on for 22 years, I think, and I don't think I went more than 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. So
you probably paid a very low price compared with where we are today.
Yeah, pretty low. I mean, it was, as I recall, I was going to buy some more later on, and it had gotten up to somehow $15 sticks in my head, but I don't an ounce. I don't remember. It was a while ago, But I was when I get up to 15, I'm like, whoa, this is expensive. Or maybe it was 7. We got up to 20, and I was unhappy because I had just paid 15. But I'm not as I like silver. I think it's good, but I personally am not sure that it has as solid a connection to kind of monetary mindset. I mean, not only that central banks don't own it, but I don't think the average person. I mean, the average person doesn't think of gold, but I don't think even the person that thinks of monetary metals, I think they only think of silver. I don't know. I just don't. It doesn't have a place as close to my heart as gold, I guess.
I mean, for me, gold is the money,
Yeah.
and silver has been obviously there have been long periods of history when we were on a bimetallic standard, and there was a fixed ratio of silver to gold, whether it was 15 to 1 or 20 to 1, something other in that range. And there's an awful lot of people who think we should need to get back to that ratio. We're at about 100 to 1 now. So in other words, you need 100 ounces of silver to buy an ounce of gold. I'm not a great believer in that, but I do think silver will go higher because of the industrial use, and the industrial use, the main use being the electronics industry, where consumption is rising about 20% a year.
Right. Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I think anything that has value will go up. It's just a question of whether it goes up I mean, everything goes up in price because of inflation. But I agree. I think, believe it or not, gold has a tremendous use in electronics. I mean, it's very useful. It's just very expensive. And so they try their hardest to get away from gold, and they find all kinds of silver alternatives and things. But trust me, you'd much rather have wire bonds to a gold pad or what have you than to anything else, because it just doesn't corrode, So there's a lot of uses for gold in electronics as well. It's just so expensive that they can't. So,
I can imagine that when you've got something which cannot fail, it would be critical if it failed. You need the metal which won't corrode.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's basically it.
So you were in computers or circuit boards at some point, so you know about these things, right?
I used to be a board designer, so sure. I mean, all the pads used to be, well, not all the pads everywhere, but there were a lot of gold pads, right? Inside chips especially, but yeah.
And how do you feel about gold these days? Are you still buying, or have you come to a halt?
No. I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm not like the way I buy these days. I mean, I'm gonna go to Porkfest in June, and I'll probably think about. People like to barter and trade, and I'll probably trade something for some gold or maybe silver. I don't know what people will have there. There's a guy named Silver Dave, not a different Dave, but who does a lot of silver. Anyways, but no, I go to the jewelry store up the street here in town. Every couple of weeks, I ask him what he's got. Every now and then, he's got a sovereign. Every now and then, he's got whatever, and I'll usually buy it. Not every time, but lately he hasn't had any, and I'm not sure quite why. The last couple of weeks, but I hate this. I'm going to sound horrible. I like to buy the dip. I mean, I know it doesn't dip very much. It's kind of dipped right now. This might be a good time. I mean, last time I went, he didn't have anything, but yeah, I don't. There's a numismatic coin dealer up here in North Lancaster, New Hampshire, I think. I forget the name of it. Anyways, I've gone up there, but I don't get as excited about getting a particular, country's coin or head of a leader or whatever. That doesn't. I actually just care about the gold. I mean, that's why I bought when I took the allocated stuff. I just took a couple of bars and a bunch of coins, but because the bars were just less expensive, and to me, I didn't even think that it didn't really matter at that point, because gold would be a 30.
Yeah, you just thought differently if you knew it was going to be today's price.
Yes, I suppose. It wouldn't have mattered as much, but at the time I still thought about, hey, well, I'm going to get my money's worth, dollars worth for this metal. So, I mean, I still don't, I'm not going to sell it, so it doesn't really matter. In other words, I mean, I guess if we had some sort of Mad Max thing, see, even the Mad Max thing, I think the value of gold, well, I don't think gold is quite as liquid as everybody says. I mean, it is maybe on some greater market, but in terms of, I mean, stocks are not liquid to my friends. I can't, or anything, dollar bills are the only, I can't sell treasuries to my next door neighbor for a cow or whatever. You know what I mean? He doesn't have a cow, but you know what I'm saying. Um, so if the crap hits the fan thing happens, which I don't believe, well, nobody wants it to happen. So in general, I have much more faith that it's not going to happen. Countries, people, individuals will do whatever it takes to not have that happen because nobody really wants it to happen. It'll only happen by mistake. So, but that, the dot-com crash was kind of a mistake. Great financial crisis was a mistake. So anything can happen. But yeah, I don't think it will. But anyways, my point is I don't think it's quite as liquid as, I mean, everybody recognizes it, but yeah, it's not, yeah. You'd be better to have candy bars.
I feel that if we go into a high inflationary environment, a hyperinflationary environment, obviously it starts with high inflation, people will start to learn what gold and silver is very, very quickly.
Right. No, I agree. I don't think, I think, right. I mean, it's kind of like, and again, I've never been in a country with hyperinflation, but as I understand it, they will save in things like gold and you know what I mean, or dollars in some places that back when the dollar was strong, and the dollar is still strong when compared to other countries, but being in hyperinflation. But yeah, no, I think that, but in terms of like if everybody's in hardship, again, I'm not talking against gold. I just think that the value of gold will not be as constant to back then. In other words, and even now, I don't think you can just go to your next door neighbor and say, "Hey, look, I've got an ounce of gold here. Give me $3,000."
Your next door neighbor wouldn't know the price. He'd have no
Well,
clue.
even if they knew the price, I'm not sure they'd want it. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, if they were trying to save and the money was disappearing, down the toilet, they would probably buy it for dollars. That's true. They would do that, but I don't know. But anyways, yeah. So I'm not poo-pooing gold. Trust me, I think it's great. I just don't think it's. I believe in diversification, and at any time, something is going to have more value than something else, and so you've got to have that something. If you really need it at that point. I mean, it's kind of life is all about kind of cash flow. When you get, I mean, if you have plenty of cash, there's no worry about cash flow. But every single day, it's kind of about cash flow. You got to have whatever cash is necessary to do whatever it is you want to do. And so, there will be times when nobody's going to want whatever you have, gold or a house or what have you, no matter how much value you think you have in it. So, but if you have tuna fish, maybe that'll be the day. You know what I mean? That you can sell tuna fish or trade it for something. But anyways, I don't think this crap hits the fan thing is going to happen. But in terms of saving money for my kids, that's, I think, the best way to do it.
It's a great heirloom to pass down the generations. And, this is the way I see it. I don't see it as anything I want to ever change back into cash or even intend to change back. It doesn't matter what the price is. There's no thought process that if it goes to 10,000 or 20,000, I'll turn it in and get some cash. What am I going to do with the cash? I've got to turn it back into something to give it to pass it down the generations. So I could turn it back into a painting maybe, but it's I'm just a painting or gold. Gold is far more liquid than a painting, isn't it?
I agree with that. Yeah. There are plenty of things. Yeah, and people talk. They say, well, gold doesn't give you a return. Well, I mean, other than when it's going up like it is now. But yeah, that's true. But I think about real estate. I mean, I own this house and I own a piece of land in the next town, and I basically rent it because I pay a tax, you know what I mean, to own this house. My land, on the other hand, is luckily it's in current use, so it's very low. It's only I own 32 acres. It's only $66 a year, so that's fine. But the taxes on this house are like $6,000 a year. So I'm kind of renting it. I mean, I own it, but I'm renting it. And if I don't pay my tax, I won't own it. You know what I'm saying? The government will take it. So that doesn't happen with gold. There's no tax. It doesn't give me a return, but it just sits there and looks at me, and I can't, and if I pass it on, it's actually better in some ways than real estate. So.
I think it will be a great asset to pass down the generations. And if the SHIT hits the fan, well, you will be able to sell it because everybody will want it at that point.
Yeah, I guess yes. I mean, to a point. I mean, yes, not everybody, but yes, there'll be enough. Everybody, you'll be able to find somebody, right?
I liked your little story about you going into the local jewelry shop and saying, "What have you got?" You've obviously built up a relationship there, and so the guy knows you. And when you come in, if he's got something, he's gonna pull it out.
Sure.
That's a great tactic for anyone to use to acquire gold. You got to in the early stages, you've got to go into a shop and buy something. And when you've bought something, you're then their friend. And so next time you come back and if they've got something, they're going to show it to you. And that's how I built up my relationship. I've got a relationship now with two coin shops. I suppose I could, I don't, that's not really the right word to call them coin shop. One is Degussa, which is a very, very large gold and silver dealer. They deal in coins too. And the other one is a little shop which buys it buys gold and silver, but it also buys watches and handbags and bits of jewelry and things like that, which it resells. But they kind of got to know me now. And so whenever anything comes in, I get a text message or a phone call to say, "Oh, we've got something you might be interested in." And I just show you what I bought today. I went to, when did I put it? I went to Degussa to see what they got. And someone had just brought in to sell a 5-ounce silver. It's from Australia. It's a 5-ounce, and now this is proof. So it comes with a proof certificate. But it's quite a.
Oh wow, 5. Oh yeah.
It's quite a big coin. It's the dragon from I think 2012.
Yeah,
and I checked into it afterwards. It's very rare. They made less than 5,000 of these 5-ounce coins, and you literally can't buy one anywhere on the planet. So, in a way, I'm collecting for the beauty of these things as much as for the silver content. Of course, I paid much more than the silver content. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to tell you. Maybe 30% more.
Yeah, I know.
But it was a nice premium. Of course, we have VAT to pay, so there's the VAT. Then there's maybe another 15 or 20% premium on top of that. But it's a beautiful coin. It's rare, and it's mine, and nobody else can. I can, if I want a second one, I'll never find one. They're in very, very tight hands.
Yeah. No. And again, I guess so my daughter is a bit of an artist. I mean, she's not into coins or gold or anything like that, and so she appreciates art and beauty and she's more of a product designer, a packaging designer, but still for cosmetic companies and what have you. And so she appreciates, so she's going to come in at some point and decorate my house and what have you. So she says, but I don't know, somehow maybe I was just, I don't want to say desensitized, but maybe my work of engineering just led me down a path where I'm just not, or maybe I went down that path because I'm just not into aesthetics as much as and beauty and things like that. I mean, not that I don't appreciate beauty, but I don't know. I don't search it out. So yeah, I'm not and I don't think I'm a collector of anything. At one point, I wanted to not collect cars, but I was really interested in collectible cars. But yeah, I guess I just don't. I'm not that. I don't have that tendency to do that. But I can see why. Like I said, I went up to, I forget the name of the place up in Lancaster, the coin place, and they have a lot of interesting things there. And there were some things that interested me because of their history. I can't remember I can't remember specifically, but there were some very interesting things. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm not even a big historian, but I do appreciate things like that. But I don't naturally get attracted to things like that.
Well, I was never a collector of coins. I would just pop into these shops and say, "What have you got?" Thinking I'll buy the cheapest bullion they've got. But
Right.
as this started to happen, I would maybe sometimes silver coins would be typical. I'd buy maybe 12 silver coins that had come in, and amongst those 12 silver coins, there might be one or two which
Mm,
were parts of bigger collections.
mm.
And then another time I'd go back and buy some others from another shop, and I started noticing I got two or three from the same collection. I thought, wouldn't it be nice to get the rest?
The whole thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's
Uh,
good. I mean,
it sort
I
of just grew on me a bit.
yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Like I said, that'll probably that bit in my head will probably tick off someday, and I'll be like, oh, I've got two of these and one of those, and there's only two in the middle. I should get like the rest of it. But the other thing that I find interesting about this local shop is that this guy is a bit of a gold bug. I know I mean, obviously he's a jeweler, but he believes in gold, and he's a gold bug. And when we sit and talk, and he's showing me different things, he'll tell me how he got them, like not specific names of ladies and men, but oh, this person came in and sold me 10 of those or three of those or whatever. And so I get a sense of when, I mean, in this little town, anyways, in this area, when people are sort of buying and when people are selling. I mean, I guess that's the only reason he has. I mean, he doesn't buy it from outside. And at one point, he had a whole lot of gold, and he himself thought he was holding too many. And I forget what too many was. He told me it was a significant amount of ounces, and he sold it to whoever he sells to, buys from himself, because he thought, I guess, that he didn't say it, but he thought the gold price was a little elevated at that point too. That was about 3 months ago. I forget when it was, but so yeah. So anyways, I get a good sense of not who's buying and selling, but whether people are buying and selling, and I just so so what I tend to do is I try to take all these stupid random bits of information and think about it and weave it and kind of weave it into, well, I guess the term these days is a narrative, to try to understand what's going on, and that so I think in sort of macro terms. That's not necessarily macro like for the world, but anyways, I imagine maybe I try to think about why they'd be selling now and why they'd be buying and what have you, and then kind of anyways. That's how I do a lot of my. I want to say that's how I do my investing, but that's one of the things I use when I think about my investment. I'm not a trader. That's one thing I'd like to learn to be is a trader, and that's why I was interested in some of your lessons of investing. Was I'm not a trader. I think I don't want to become I don't want the majority of what I do to be trading, but I think it would be not just fun, but I think I leave money on the table, if you will. I mean, as an example, for a long time, the FANG stock, back when they were FANG stocks, and now they're magnificent sevens, but the FANG stocks were just going through the roof, and I was just like, oh, this is killing me. It's going through the roof, and I think I owned Apple at one point, but I sold it because the PE was just getting too high for me, and I was just like, okay, and they weren't trade, and they weren't giving any dividends, and I said, I got to get into these FANG stocks to make myself feel better. So I bought like what I call one position in an ETF that was a FANG S or something like that. And it dealt with the FANG stocks. And it was just one thing, but it made me feel, and it wasn't like a lot of money, but I was riding it up. And I didn't feel like, oh my God, I could have the rest of my money in that FANG thing. But I just felt like I wasn't missing out, fear of missing out. And anyways, that's how so when that happened, and then I did sell it at a good time. It started to dip down. I was like, okay, I've had enough of the FANG stocks, and I left. But I think the same thing happened when we had this drop month ago, 2 months ago, whatever it was, the first big drop recently. And I admit I timed it pretty well. Luckily, I was like, and I like to buy on dips, but I don't usually like to buy the day after the dip. And I said, okay, I'm just going to put in not a margin, a limit order at some price that was even below what it had closed at the day before. And I was not thinking it would hit, and boom, I got 3 hits or 4 hits, and I was just like, I mean, I only put in four orders, and they all hit, and I'm like, crap. And then the next day they went up a lot. I made like thousands of dollars in 2 days, and I was like, okay, that's enough. I don't think this is going to last. And I put in another limit order, thinking it was going to come down, and that it would eventually, so I put it up high, and 3 of them sold, and then that day, if they sold on the open, and that day they went down a lot, and I was like, wow. And Google, I think, was the only one that didn't hit, and I was like, oh well, I got a good price, I'll just sit here forever. And then like 3 days later, it went up. But anyways, my point is, it's playing, but I feel, anyways, I want to learn. That was not a strategy, but but I like to do these little things to play like that. You know what I mean?
I think there's no harm in having a very small percentage to try and see if we can outsmart the market. But
Yeah.
you know what the spread betting companies say? They say they call their clients 90, 90, 90. That's because 90% of their clients lose 90% of their money in 90 days.
Right. Did that.
And
Yeah.
the reality is, the more you trade, the more likely you are to be at the wrong end of it, and enough to lose a lot of money. So I don't trade. I mean, in my life, I've tried it. Then I give it a break for 5 years. Then I try it again. Then I give it a break for 5 years. It just never ever works.
Yeah.
So when I talked about stocks the other day, wasn't really talking about trading. It was, I bought something which was dirt cheap, in my opinion. I didn't have a particular time frame to keep it, and those things actually, over a period of years, went up an awful lot. And there comes a point when it's so much money that you say, I'll take the money off the table, because I can't bear the thought that it would go down to anywhere close to what I paid for it, because I'd lose so much.
Right.
But it's never been an idea that I'll buy something and I'll sell it again 6 months or 9 months or tomorrow, as some people think. That's not. I'm not into that sort of trading. It's really try and buy a great company at a great price with growth. But if you're buying growth, you've got to wait years for that growth to produce. The growth might be coming, the share price might be moving up, but to be reflected in the earnings per share of the dividend, that's a multi-year process.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd say I tend to focus on. I don't mind. I tend to buy companies. All the companies I've bought that I can think of at this point. No, that's not true, because I bought some along the way. I've bought at dips, big dips. Like great financial crisis kind of dips, and so they went up. I mean, not every single one, but they went up significantly. And but I bought them because I like the dividend. And the way I think of it is, if the stock comes down, as long as the company stays solid, in other words, it's not falling apart or whatever, it's not getting into massive debt or what have you, then I like to keep them. And I imagine that they're just paying me to hold them. Their dividends are, they're just paying me to hold the stock. So, I mean, I have a couple oil companies that I own that really I made, at one point they were up a double, 2.5 times what I paid for them. And now they're down to like, 30 or 40% gain, right? So I don't think that's terrible, because like I said, they've been paying a nice dividend. I mean, pretty nice. It's not as nice as some of the others, but I think they're solid companies, and I couldn't buy them for what I did at the beginning. And so and sort of my dividend percentage is a lot higher than the one that the one that's right now. So anyways, what they're paying right now, I think of what I bought the stock for, not what it costs right now.
Yeah,
So
the yield was higher when you bought it, but because the stock price has risen, the
yes, the
yield
yield's gone
seems
down. Yeah,
lower. But the dividend has not gone down.
no, I mean the percentage has gone. The percentage dividend has gone down.
Yeah,
The
just the
dividend has
percentage.
stayed up. It's actually gone up.
Yeah.
The but yeah, not as much as the share price has gone up. So the percentage has gone down. The dividend
So
percent.
when you buy a stock, you're looking at the future dividend flow and saying that's what I'm going to eat, or how are you thinking?
Yeah, so I basically look mostly I for those stocks that I'm talking about right there, I looked at the fact that they were solid. I looked at the fact that they were solid companies. In fact, they were dividend kings, I guess. What is it? Aristocrats are better than kings? I forget. But they had dividends continuously increasing for I forget 30 years or 25 years. And I felt they were oil companies at that point, and oil was down to like $20 a barrel. I don't know, 25. It was ridiculous and terrible. They took a shellacking, and I just don't think energy um, is a bad business to be in. I mean, the thing that worries me right now is if the world splits up and these big multinational energy companies are out there, what could exactly happen to them? I'm not sure. If countries start to nationalize or what have you, that is always a problem. But I think that honestly, I think that they're so big that the companies will take some care, in not ruining, because I think energy is kind of an important thing. I mean, you can't just cut off your nose to spite your face. So I think they'll be very careful with these big multinationals. But again, that's just my opinion. I don't know. But that's the only thing that I fear right this second with all of that sort of stuff. And again, it's not going to happen overnight, and if it happens at all. But anyway, so in that regard, I look at the companies like that, and the fact that they're going to give me those dividends and more off into the future. They're very solid, in my opinion. Although the two companies were sort of different in different ways, solid. But anyways, they were, yeah. I bought them for the dividend. At the time, inflation was not for as high as it was in the last year and a half, so the dividend was really good. Now the dividend's kind of the rate of inflation.
You know what? You don't need a financial advisor. You are a financial advisor.
No, I wouldn't say that. I
I mean,
wouldn't
you've
say.
got you're saying all the right things, about buying a dividend flow, buying into the dips. This is the sort of thing that the vast majority of even the professionals dream about. Professionals are horribly wrong most of the time. They're rushing into the hot stocks where everyone else is rushing, wishing they'd thought about it 6 months earlier when the price was low.
Well, somebody told me that the professionals have a harder time. It's kind of like why public companies have a harder time, because public companies and professional advisors, they have to prove themselves like every week sometimes, but every quarter. You know what I mean? Every quarter, or at least every year, somebody says, "Hey, look at the S&P 500's up, whatever," and you're only or whatever. I'm conservative. Whatever index that I care about the most, Nasdaq, God help you. You never meet them. You never do this. You never do that. What have you done for me lately? And so they've got to. So I think a lot of people have described it as at the end of the year they got to buy their window dressing or something like that. For example, whatever they got to get into their FANG stocks or whatever they call them, Nifty 7 or whatever they are. And so they always have to prove that they've got the right stocks and they get the right returns. And so they probably, I don't want to say gamble more, but I don't even want to say
They,
juice the
they
number.
probably don't behave in exactly the same way for their clients as they would behave for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it doesn't bother me right now that some of my dividend stocks, not losing money on them, but I'm still, not. I could have sold it way up here, and now I only have a 30% gain on it. And it's like, oh, what terrible! That would have been horrible. I sort of lost money, but I didn't really. The other thing is, you never really lose money until you or make money until you sell. So, I mean, if I don't need that capital, like if I'm not going to spend it on something, I don't necessarily want to. I do it for the long term.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I've got stocks which I've held for 10 years now. And why do I hold them? Because I mean, more than 10 years, some of them. Why do I hold them? Because they continue to pay dividends. The dividends sometimes go up. At least they're keeping pace with inflation, if not more.
yeah,
And what would if I sell it for cash, what are you going to do with it? You've got to do
right,
something. You get cash. There's only reason to sell something is if you've got something better to buy with it.
right,
Selling it and keeping the cash, then you're on a gamble. You're gambling that, hey, the market's going to go down. And you might be wrong, and you might miss out on everything.
right. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, and the other thing is, I mean, and what I don't do is I let the dividends flow into my cash account, and that just builds up my cash. So I always, I don't say always, but I for the last bunch of years I've had a pretty good amount of money in cash or close to cash equivalents. I put it into short-term treasuries or something like that, so I get some kind of a return. It's actually a pretty good return for a while, yeah. So I guess that's the way I am. I'm just like a deep value investor. I mean, if you want to think of it that way. So
Yeah, I mean that's what I teach all the time to those who listen. You need to be looking at the value of what you're getting, not the price. You need to compare the value of what you're buying with the price you have to pay. And the two will always be different. And if the value is higher than the price you're paying, you find yourself a bargain. And if the value is lower than the price you're paying, unfortunately, you're a mug.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I can't say every single stock I've ever bought was like that, and even in the last 2 years, I've bought a few stocks that I've sort of speculated on. That a couple of them were not, they were not even they weren't even dividend paying, but they were kind of in an industry that, um, like a couple of years ago, I started to think about, and I saw I have a few stocks that were in the. I thought the bricks were going to somehow come onto their own somehow, and I still think they will. So I started to look at things in Brazil and what have you, a lot of different countries, not necessarily. Actually, I had some Russian stocks that the federal government took away from us, but
Oh, yes.
so that was kind of sad. I didn't like that, um, but anyways, yeah. So I mean, I do. That's what when I said that I kind of go off and try to think in macroeconomic terms. I try to think of a bigger picture and look for possibilities or things that have value that aren't seen just yet. I mean, I don't think I have any expertise in finding value. Like that's not. I mean, I don't think there's anything special about me that does that. But I do think that, so anything that I find, I think other people have already found. You know what I mean? But I don't have to be the first person there. But anyway, so there are other companies. There are some tech companies that I dipped my toe into that did okay. But I sell them when they get to the point where, I mean, I had them for a couple of years, and where they get to the point where I'm happy. Like, okay, this stock is. I mean, Apple was one of them. It was stupid. I shouldn't
Yep.
have sold it. Apple, to me, just got too overvalued, and I was just like, I can't stand it. The PE was below 10, I think, for a long time. I think it was at 5 at one point, and then they got up to like 15, which is like the historical average for the S&P 500. I was just like, oh, this is too much. I had to get out. That was a bunch of years ago too. I kicked myself. I was like, why did I
I
sell my?
I had Apple. What made me buy it? Um, Apple had a dip, and they just brought out something called AirPods, these little white things you put in the air, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody was laughing at it and making fun of it and saying this is stupid. Who's going to walk around with that stuff? Those things in their ears. But I thought it was something I wanted because I wanted to listen to music on the move. So I went to the Apple store and they were sold out. And I kept going back week after week, and they were always sold out. It was like 3 months wait delay.
Hmm.
And I said, what would happen if 1 in 20 owners of iPhones, just 1 in 20, buys a pair of these AirPods? I think, that's a reasonable assumption.
Hmm.
And then I started doing the maths. Apple had a 30%, and still do, 30% margin on everything they sell.
Hmm.
And came to the number of billions of pairs of AirPods, whatever it was, hundreds of millions which would be sold, and the margin. And I added that to the profit they made the previous year, and it
Hmm.
was a sizable increase.
Right,
And I
right.
said, okay, and Apple wasn't expensive at the time. So I dived in, and of course, the sale of AirPods, it turned out not to be one in 20, it's like one in two
Oh, yeah.
have got AirPods now. And
Wow.
some people like me have got multiple pairs.
Right, right. I was going to say, if you have multiple pairs or you lose multiple pairs, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, Apple. It's the other thing about Apple. It's the way Tesla used to be, but now not anymore. Maybe, but they have their enthusiasts, and once you're an Apple person, you're not going to go to Samsung or what have you. You're going to be Apple all the way, and so every single Apple thing is going to be bought. It's I don't want to say cultish, but you know what I mean. People are in that uh, whatever that solar system.
Yeah,
They like the
ecosystem. It's yeah.
ecosystem.
I was in the Apple store today. I didn't buy anything, but there was they got this new iPhone out, which is there's a big sign saying it's now AI ready, and I don't know what that means, but it sounds good anyway. So I'm probably going to get that. I think it's the
Yeah.
iPhone 16.
Huh. Well, I mean, I like, so with I have an Android phone, a Google phone, so I mean, it's a Samsung, um, I actually like now when query Google by voice for things, it answers me with whatever Gemini, whatever their AI thing is. And it's actually very good. I mean, it gives me much more. I mean, it gives me the same Google search afterwards, but it gives me the AI synopsis. And then, of course, I can ask it for more detail on this, that, or the other thing. And it's actually pretty good. I like it. I like it a lot. I mean, I don't know that it seems to be right. I mean, I don't know. It gives me a lot more detail that I don't have. I mean, the detail is probably in every Google search, but it seems to, give me a good synopsis of what I want to hear about it. So I don't know if it's learning about me and all my questions, and then coming to learn how I think, and then therefore shape the answer to my brain. I don't know, but I would assume that's what AI is doing, and that's why I like the answers. You know what I mean? So probably Apple AI is the same thing.
Just today, this morning, I was having a conversation with my iPhone. It wasn't the Siri; it was the ChatGPT version of it.
Mm.
I was saying, "Well, what's the stock market doing today? How about the gold price? What are treasuries doing? What's the foreign exchange rate?" And it was giving me a nice verbal. Okay, speaking to me, we were speaking backwards and
Right.
forwards because I was carrying an umbrella. It was raining, so I had the iPhone in one hand, the umbrella in the other.
Right.
You can't type. So
Right.
speaking to it was absolutely great because it could speak back, gave me all the information I wanted, and only what I asked for, as opposed to going to some website where you've got to click on links and find things.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've got to look through, and so third paragraph is interesting. Oh, fifth one, yeah, yeah, no, it's awesome. Like I said, I think, I mean, I think we live in an awesome era at this point. I mean, it'll be great 100 years from now, but I don't think I imagined when I was a kid. I mean, we talked about flying cars. We don't have that. Well, we kind of do, but nobody cares about them. But yeah, this kind of. Although I did see a video today from a fellow back in 1974, I remember, and he was an IBM, and he was talking to a news reporter, and he was telling him, yeah, yeah, and of course, it doesn't sound incredible now, but this was 1974. Yeah, yeah, you'll have a computer in your house, and you'll type, and he didn't talk about talking to it, but it'll know about you, and so on and so forth. I was just like, wow, I mean, it's kind of what we have had. I mean, for a number of years now. But, anyways, my point is, uh, this kind of AI stuff. The robotics, I guess, is the only thing that we imagine we'd have a lot more of now. It's coming, but it isn't quite here yet. So, personal robot.
When I was a lad, they had a show on the television called Joe 90. And the feature of Joe 90 was his dad had this mammoth computer. It was the size of a room with lots
Yeah.
of spinning reels of tape.
Yeah.
But the feature of Joe 90 was he had this special pair of I don't know, kinetic glasses or something. You put the glasses on your head, and suddenly all the knowledge of the computer, which had come from his dad, could now be transferred into Joe 90's brain.
Mm. Yeah, and we're getting there. I need to get my brain to absorb it faster. That's all. But yeah, yeah.
Well, that I was really that's the new problem today. There are people out there who cannot be without the social media even for a second. They've got to be, they're on the tube, they're listening to podcasts at double speed,
Right.
they're walking to work, they're doing the same thing, and they get to work, they're immediately checking the news, and it doesn't stop.
Right.
And and then they go to sleep playing
Yeah.
YouTubes or something just to keep filling their brain with information.
Yeah. I mean, I guess from my perspective, I mean, there are a lot of different addictions in the world. I have an addiction to eating. I mean, it hasn't been diagnosed, but you know what I mean? I feel like I have a hard time keeping my weight down, losing weight. But yeah, I mean, smoking, gambling, I don't know, all the other addictions. It's just another addiction, I think. I'm not sure how the mind works, but we have a predilection, whatever. We tend to have a lot of people tend to have an addictive tendency, I guess, and that's another. And I think, by the way, I think the media companies and the phone and the social media companies and what have you, they understand that and they feed that addiction. So, yeah.
Well, for investing in stocks, what sectors do you think might be a nice play yourself? And we'll talk about what I think in a minute, but what do you think?
So it's interesting you say that because I haven't really paid much attention as of late. Right now, I think, well, first of all, I haven't paid much attention. I've kind of gone to sleep a little bit in terms of, I mean, what I used to do is used to take a look at different sectors and how they're doing against each other and what have you. And I haven't done that lately. And I thought, how did I used to do that? I mean, right now, what I generally do is I keep a watch list of things in an area that, like you said, would be interesting. So what do I think? And I decided, why, as I was getting ready for this, why is it that I haven't done that? And I don't know why I haven't done that. I don't have I usually have a handwritten list over here of things that I wanted to look at and things I've looked at with check marks. In fact, that's what I did with my 4 stocks. I had made a list and, the ones that I bought on that dip. So I guess I'd say it depends. I mean, I still think, so I don't have any particular companies or even particular sectors, but I do think that the rest of the world is still going to continue to disengage or from each other, or at least from us, or segment itself into multiple pieces maybe. And I go back to what they used to talk about a long time ago with the Trilateral Commission or whatever. I mean, that's the conspiracy theorist people back then talking. But, they had this thought that the world would break up. It would have 3 separate places of center, if you will. Was it the Asians, the West, and I forget the third. But so anyways, I think the world, I don't know that it's necessarily going to break up the way they imagined. I mean, but I do think that organizations like BRICS will be more important. I think if they do come up with some sort of I don't know if they'll come up with a currency, but anyways, I think they're going to play well with each other. And so the only thing that worries me is like how much because I'm in the United States, how much the United States is going to keep them away from me or me away from them. That's the thing that worries me. You know what I mean? Like like I said, I had some stock. I had a money in a ERUS, which was a Russian ETF that had Russian stocks. And the United States decided, you can't have that. We're going to close that ETF. And I would have been happy if they just gave me the stock somehow. Let me open an account somewhere, put the stock from that thing in there, and just like, okay, tell me I can't trade it. It's fine, but I want to own those companies. You know what I mean? If they go bankrupt, if you have a war with whatever, but I feel like they're mine, but they took them away, if you will, right? So that's what I worry about most. So I don't, I don't know what to think because I don't know how exactly it's going to split out. But I do think other places in the world and some places within the United States will do better because of this breaking apart. Um, Hopefully, there won't be any wars. I mean, there are already are wars, but hopefully they won't break out into bigger wars. But yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. So what? But what particular companies? I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think a lot more about that.
Oh, no, we don't need to name
What do
companies
you
here.
think?
Um, well, at the moment, I think there's two sectors which I like. One of which I've started focusing on, and I'm continuing to buy. That's in the gold mining sector. You know, the gold price has gone up a lot, and
Mm,
the obvious beneficiary of a higher gold price will be those companies which have the money to dig it
right,
up.
right,
So I'm looking at gold companies, looking at the ones which are already making profits and the ones which have got cash in the bank. I think that's an important factor. And I was doing it manually, but I found a faster way to do it with AI now. Particularly, I'm
right.
using Grok for that, GROK, which is Elon Musk's thing, I think. Um,
Oh,
but you could basically say to Grok, if the gold price was $3,000, how much profit will this company make next year? And Grok will work it out for you.
oh,
Um,
that's cool. Grok.
so,
Yeah, Grok
so
is a unit. Yeah. Sorry.
I found I'm looking at these gold mining companies. A lot of them next year will be on price earnings ratios below 10, which is very cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And quite a few of them pay decent dividends today, and
Right.
that's based on the earnings they made a year ago when the gold price was a lot lower.
Right.
When I say decent dividends, I'm talking perhaps 3% to 5.5%, depends where you look. So I'm quite attracted to that because it's cheaper than the rest of the market, and the product that they're selling is going up in price and looks
Right.
like it will continue to do so. So that's one area I'm looking at. I bought, I don't know, probably five or six gold mining companies so far this year. I bought some last year as well. Not all, they weren't all gold mining. Some were silver as well, and some were general mining. But probably at least four gold mining companies, and then at least one silver mining company, at least one general miner of all kinds of things. That's
Yeah.
in
Yeah. I have a couple. I guess I have a couple of minors as well from a couple of years ago. But so the question I have, and that's good. I like. I think you're right. But so here's the question I have. Will Grok help you understand, or is there any way to understand? I mean, one of the things that, as I understand, gold miners do is I guess they go out. I guess it's the futures market. They kind of sell their gold ahead, right? That's still in the ground. They go off and sell it. Is there any way you can find out what is Grok? Can Grok tell you, or where can you look up, sort of the? I guess it'd be just a typical. You can't find out to the day, but the typical sort of futures activity that these particular companies have. Is that a public piece of information? You know.
Yeah, it's often or usually disclosed in the annual report how much of their gold they've sold forward and at what price, and also at what price. So that they've got gold which has been sold forward, and they've got gold which was actually sold. And so you get to they usually tell you two things. One, the average price achieved over the last 3 months, 6 months, or a year, depending on how they report it. And the second thing they tell you is how much gold as in ounces they've sold forward and what the average price they got on the forward sales is. Of course, when the gold price is going up, there's maybe a little bit of embarrassment that they sold that gold forward a year ago or 6 months ago because they would have had a lower price. So perhaps there's not quite as much enthusiasm to say we sold half our gold production forward at the moment as there would have been if the gold price had gone down.
Oh, I'm sure they're not enthusiastic, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they have a better crystal ball. They might have they certainly have a better crystal ball than me because they're in the industry and they know what everybody's
Mm.
doing. Yeah, but I mean, they have to run their business, and when things are inflating away and everything's getting expensive and supply chains are cut and what have you, they got to keep like I said, everything's about cash flow, and they got to make sure they have the money that they need when they need it. Like if they miss it for a month, they might be really in trouble. And so, yeah, so I get why they do it. And yeah, it's embarrassing, but
Yeah, also the same arena of gold mining companies. I've also bought a couple of, maybe only one, uh, speculative companies, and I base that on them having
Say,
lots of
say it again. You dropped out.
yeah, speculative.
Oh,
It means they have a lot of gold in the ground,
yeah.
but they don't have the money to dig it up
Right, right, right.
because they're trying to raise cash. And for the gold mining companies who don't have money, it's really, really hard to raise cash at the moment. They're struggling. But the big miners are mostly very cash rich. So what I'm looking at is if I look at the big miners who've got a lot of cash in the bank, what smaller companies are near them, and do those smaller companies have a lot of gold in the ground but no money?
Hmm.
Because if that's the case, it means that the big mining company might want to acquire the smaller company because the location is nearby. They don't have to move their equipment too much. They don't have to move their staff or their management around too much to go between two mines. So smaller mining companies, which have got a lot of gold but not a lot of cash, are probably targets if they're in the region or nearby a major company mine.
Yeah, I've heard somebody else say something like that, and that makes sense. I don't know that I'd have enough. I mean, I guess I got plenty of time. Well, I don't have plenty of time. I'm pretty busy, but yeah, that would be that. That seems very interesting. I mean, that seems like a good approach. The only thing that worries me about gold miners in general is nothing about your approach, but just my general fear of everything. I mean, I'm an engineer, so I tend to look at bad things. You know, I look for bad things because that's all I did was find problems, and you don't find problems by looking for good things. You only think about what could be bad. So the only thing that worries me right now with the world kind of two things: the money, gold is becoming more and more valuable. There might actually be a gold standard or some kind of connection to gold again, maybe. And so it becomes really important to all these companies and countries, I should say. And so the only thing that worries me about gold miners a little bit, and again, I'm not, that shouldn't keep you. Speculation is speculation. I mean, you know what I mean. It's not guaranteed, anyways. I'm not saying it's a bad bet, but is that the countries might, in some way, decide to nationalize or in some way take over. In other words, I'm not sure. I'm not sure in general. Like right now, um, the investment market is a great thing, and every country finds it the way to make things happen, the way to make growth happen. But I don't know. I'm not sure it's going to be as I don't know
Are you
favorable.
sort of fearing some sort of global waves of nationalization where governments take over all kinds of industries which they see as strategically important or need to be protected in some way? Is that what you're thinking of?
I don't see it. I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen. But yeah, I think so. Like I said, as part of the ripping apart of relations, um, yeah, I think. I mean, just look at what the United States has tried to cut Americans away from and off from, right? I mean, I mean, other countries, all kinds of sanctions, what have you. And again, maybe that's just my American centric view. Maybe America will go isolate itself over here and everybody else will just become a big happy family and you'll be happy, but I'll be isolated. So maybe that's just my worry because of and again, I'm not so anti-Trump. Um, I think he's a big bull in the china closet. He always has been. But but anyway, some of the stuff he's doing had to be broken, I think, because it's been broken. I mean, it's actually been broken, and we've been just kind of digging ourselves deeper into a hole. And I think we do have to change something. But anyways, not to go off on that tangent. That is one thing I worry about with particularly things like gold, because gold is going to be a tier one asset for everybody, and everybody's going to want to have it.
Yeah, I
So
mean, if we go back to a gold standard, that becomes a lot more likely because then the government has to pay its bills in gold. I think when they're not on a gold standard, it's not a serious it's not a concern that I have because if they don't need to pay their bills, or at least they don't need to pay it in gold, why would they want my gold? It makes no difference. So I don't think I worry at the moment. But if we go on a gold standard, then I'm going to start worrying about the gold miners and saying, is there a nationalization chance?
yeah, again, I don't know that it'll. I mean, I think I don't know if it'll be a gold standard. I mean, we were on the gold standard, and there wasn't really much of a standard. I mean, people inflated away anyways. I mean, the price of gold was ridiculously just capped. But yeah, no, yeah, who knows? Like I said, I think gold is growing in interest again by the central banks. This, for some reason, they're buying gold, and so I don't think they just randomly picked gold. And I think it has a historic connection to money. It is money, but what I'm saying is I don't think it's a chance that everybody's fascinated with and connected to and buying gold at that level. In other words, that's why I worry about it. I think gold is becoming more important. And like I said, if the world were coming together and harmonizing and be like, hey, everybody, who cares? Nobody's going to try to take over things. But yeah, everybody's kind of huddling around their tribe, and their tribe, if gold is important, is going to include. But again, a speculation is the reason that might be an incredible bargain is because that's not going to happen, and people like me are worried about it, and so we're not going to go heavily. I mean, I have a couple of gold miners, but they're big and they're not very speculative. I mean,
I think another area which affects business a great deal will be the beneficiaries of artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. It's like with the mining companies, in the miners in the gold rush of the 1800s, it wasn't the miners who made a lot of money; it was the people who sold the shovels made a lot of money. And I think today, whilst all the money is going into the front end, those who are making the data centers, those who are producing the software, those who are doing the artificial intelligence, at the end of the day, the real beneficiaries of all this are large companies with huge workforces, especially office-based workforces. So that's an area I haven't started to look at, but I'm planning to start plowing through the companies in the world who've got the biggest numbers of staff, and try and figure out how many of them are probably sitting behind desks. And I'm sure that number will be large, and they're probably going to be quite attractive because I think over the next few years there'll be a relatively small number of staff who become capable of doing 10 times as much work, because they will be the ones who've mastered how to have their AI and their AI agents doing the jobs of 10 people.
Right. I agree. I think that's good. I mean, again, I haven't even thought about it or looked at it, but if you could if you could come up with I just imagine that would be true for everybody, every company. And so the first thought is that I work part-time. I work at a grocery store part-time in produce. That's a company that will never use AI. I mean, until the founder is passed away. But my point is, there are some people that are very old school, some companies that are very old school, and they're going to resist it because and in their resisting of it, and I'm just talking about the place that I work part-time, they actually get people who like that, and they get their customers. They attract people because of that. So there will be companies that totally resist it and want the human touches, whatever, the non-AI touch. But yeah, if you could figure out the companies that not only will embrace it, but actually have a function or a job that would be enhanced by it. I mean, I could think of a lot of things, from travel things to, just anything that has huge data sets that you would work through and connect better with people, which is a huge data set, right? I mean, each individual person has such individual characteristics. If you could get to learn them, and then I'm just thinking of travel for some reason, and you get to learn your travel world, you could have such better services for those people. I'm just thinking of that. I mean, I'm just saying there's probably other industries that are just like that, banking or
it's AI is moving very, very fast in its capabilities. Right. Companies, for the most part, aren't moving that fast yet, but they will do, I think. I think they will start to grasp, my God, it can do this, it can do that, and there's an awful lot of tasks where you're not going to need the staff at all anymore.
I agree with that. And I also think that companies like Apple and Microsoft, with whatever they call their embedded AI on the desktop, and Google. I think Google's got the lead. I mean, not so much with an AI, but just in their and Facebook with their learning about us users.
Data, yeah.
Yeah, the data. I think what'll happen is the companies that use AI will essentially buy an AI. I mean, they'll have the AI, but they've got to get. So there's two parts. Humans are complicated, and then the world is complicated. And the AI, I think, can master the world, and it'll bring the world into whatever focus these companies want. It'll bring whatever information that's in the world to those companies. But ultimately, they got to sell it to humans. And the other thing that's probably more complex in the world is our individual humans. I mean, as a country, maybe the people across the United States are kind of similar, but if you want to focus each individual person, I mean, that was the benefit of anything online against broadcast advertising. Broadcast advertising is very general, and anything online, they can focus right to you and decide you want to buy a car, you want to buy a hat, whatever. And so the company, I think the Googles of the world, the Microsofts of the world, they will sell that. So there's two things. AI is going to bring the world to these companies. And then these companies that are learning about us and knowing more about ourselves than us will bring the other half of the data and sell it to those companies that are using the AI. And that'll bring the two complex people and the complex together into one. I mean, it's like advertising. I don't know. I just think of it in terms of advertising. They really need to focus, but now they can focus it down to you.
I've got a feeling of how fast this is going to go.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little illustration. I have an 8-year-old boy, and I said to him a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I said to him, go and write me a Python program to print out the Fibonacci sequence. And he said, what's the Fibonacci sequence? I said, go and ask Claude. Claude is Claude Sonnet is an AI. So off he went to his bedroom. 8 minutes later, he said, I've done it, Daddy. I go and look at his code. And there he's spoken to Claude.
Right.
Hasn't typed it out. Write me. And he said to Claude, what's the Fibonacci sequence? And write me a program to print it.
Yeah. No.
He said it, and then he's cut and pasted the code into the Python code. He's cut and pasted it into VS Studio and pressed run, and it worked.
Yeah.
That's an 8-year-old. He's not a genius or anything. He's just happened to have been taught by me how to use AI. He's been taught by me that Python exists, and this you can do these steps. But can you imagine when it's in the hands of a qualified 18-year-old who's far more skilled and able to produce stuff which you wouldn't have had a hope of producing at 18 years old 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean no. I mean my example is old, but my example was my dad and I back in, I don't remember what years, in the 80s, I guess. And two things come to mind. He would write these basic programs to do various things and do calculations for, I don't know, just all kinds of things. And I said to him I said to him, why don't you just do that in a spreadsheet? The spreadsheets are brand new. It's like, what's a spreadsheet? And I guess my point is, the spreadsheet took this tremendous amount of work that, he was actually kind of skilled in what he did. He wasn't a programmer, but he learned it and what have you. And it simplified it to the point where you could do much more complicated things certainly with the amount of work he did. And I think AI is going to do the same thing. You don't have to go to school for 4 years to learn whatever the programming languages that you want to find. And AI will teach you if you want to do it that way.
You don't need to be taught anymore. You just need to say what you want, and it will write it for you.
Yeah.
But
I
you got to
think
have
all.
you got to have some rudimentary skills to say, okay, what it just wrote didn't work the way I expected. Now
Right.
tell it how to make what modification I like, and you do have this iterative process. But that iterative process might be a couple of weeks backwards and forwards, and you'll finally end up with a super duper state of the art program, which would have taken years to write.
Oh, sure. No, I agree. I mean, it'll be awesome. I mean, and I think it'll be awesome for regular folks like us who know how to use spreadsheets now. And I mean, AI will be second nature like that. And yeah, and email was another thing that was like a game changer back. And I mean, this is way back, but and AI will be the same sort of thing. Yeah, I think it'll be. I think it will be awesome. I mean, in a way, well, I don't know. We'll see. It'll be awesome no matter what. But yeah, it'll be awesome. I think everybody's going to have to. Well, you don't have to, but I think it'll be advantageous for everybody to sort of learn it to some level. I mean, I've only begun to play with AI, and I think it's fascinating. I don't
I
really.
think I think it'll come to people at the basic level, just the way Google or YouTube or Facebook or any of these social media, Twitter. It'll just be a basic skill that all young people are going to have up to a certain point. But of
Right,
course, then you get to a different point where the skill levels start to separate, and you've got the content producers distinguishing themselves from people who say what they had for lunch on Facebook.
right. No, I agree with that. Yeah, so I like your idea. If I could imagine the company, so I think what'll happen is, I mean, again, I'm going back to travel for some reason. I live in an area that's a hospitality area, so maybe I just think in terms of people coming here to do things. But um, um, it, if the company that uses AI to create another service, if you will, or another level of not just a better. I'm thinking of Travelocity or something, not just a better Travelocity. Again, I don't know. I don't even travel that much, but anyways, a better service, but another thing that nobody's even thought of, and I'm not sure what that is because I haven't thought of it. Nobody's thought of it, but I think those will be so. So not only I think every company will use AI, but only some companies will be um, inventive enough or creative enough or whatever. I mean, I don't. And I think it'll just be a small company. Although I think it'll be a small company, like Sun bought a bunch of companies over the years that had done great things, and then we almost bought Apple at one point, believe it or not.
Hmm.
And it was when they just before they came out with the iPod, I think it was. And the joke used to be, and we didn't buy them. Obviously, they didn't want to be bought. I guess they were going bankrupt or something. And the joke at Sun was, yeah, if we bought Apple, we would have ruined it. So. But anyways, I think a company like I don't know. I don't want to say Apple, but I'm not saying it'll be Apple, but a company that tries to take it and do something just never heard of before will be the thing, and not just making grocery shopping better, still grocery shopping, but making I don't know what it would be, but
Well,
yeah,
the world is full of little tiny companies, and some of those companies will have highly motivated individuals who say, I can now see that this could do something for me and make me big because I've discovered an application that everyone's going to want as soon as I made it. It could be, I mean, I say an application, it doesn't have to be an application. It could be a way of doing my business, whatever my business is,
right,
benefiting from AI, so that instead of being a one-man show, I'm effectively a large company thanks to all the AI robots working for me.
right. Oh, I agree. I agree. Like I said, it'll be a creative, or what I was thinking is it'll be some creative person that thinks beyond something they want today. You know what I mean? It'll be bigger and better, and I don't know. But yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point. I don't know exactly how to. I think the companies like that's why I went back to. I think the companies like Apple, Meta, and Google will, will give the data, the other side of the data, the human data, because I think that ultimately they're going to have to do something with a human, unless we find something on Mars. I mean, I guess it could be an AI thing that humans aren't involved with, but I always think of companies having to connect with a human somehow to entice them to buy something or to offer them something they want or whatever. So, anyways, I think that the big, massive.
Okay. First, unlock your phone.
No, I didn't ask you to
If
do
you
it.
update your lock screen settings.
No. You must have heard me say Google or something, but yeah. So, anyways, I think that the big companies will. I mean, you're not gonna get massive growth out of the big companies, but I'm just saying I think
They'll be innovative and they'll find lots of new things to do.
Yeah, they'll probably buy some of these companies and ruin them, but I'll maybe buy them and not ruin them. But maybe take your investment, the little tiny company that you invest in, they'll pay you a lot of money to take them in.
Yeah, I mean, I keep finding things that I would like, and I'm not talking about physical products. I'm talking about software type products, which don't exist yet. So there's a market out there for those who discover what the public at large are looking for. And I'm sure I'm not. If I'm looking for something, there must be other people who are looking for exactly the same thing.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah. And that's probably a good way to think of it. And yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure
I mean,
you're right.
a lot of the things I was looking for 20 years ago are now actually here on my desk.
Well, that's what I was saying to my dad. He would work so hard. I mean, I'm not comparing you to my dad. I'm just saying he would work so hard on something, and I'd be like, just do it in the spreadsheet. Or he'd make these controllers to control lights, and I'm like, just use a microcontroller. You know what I mean? What are you building this AND gates for? You can just use a PLA or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I know that if we go back to the very, very early days of computers, do you remember? I don't know if you had one of these, but the old IBM PC, that was the industry standard. It was going to be an IBM PC in every home was the dream, but it was a big clunky box with green letters on a black background, no hard drive, no mouse hadn't been invented, at least there was no mouse invented because of no graphical user interface, and you had a 8086 processor which could store 256 kilobytes of RAM unless you upgraded it to 528, which was about as high as you could go to.
Right.
But somehow that we managed to find things which could run on that little space.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, I didn't have an IBM. I did have an IBM PC. Like 10 years after the IBM PC, I bought it. I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it. But I had an IBM PC that I bought because it was the original IBM PC, and I just wanted to have. This was like after Pentiums had come out. It was a long time afterwards. But I had clones, and even before that, I had S100 systems that I used to solder in my basement to put together. They were like kits. And so I've been involved with FidoNet and all this other jazz before the internet came out. And by the way, I think the IBM PC came out in 1982 or 80, something like that. Well, there was a graphical user interface. It was a Xerox PARC, and it was the thing that Apollo Computer didn't buy it, but anyways, it was around, and unfortunately, there's an example of a company that did a lot of things way ahead of its time, and they never productized it. I mean, they gave it, but they worked with Sun at one point early on. But anyways, the point is the graphical user interface and all that stuff was sort of in existence on not really used, but on mainframes or bigger computers. I mean, PARC was a small computer, but yeah, it just never. I mean, nobody thought that even workstations would end up on people's desks. But so the PC, I wrote this paper in 1994. I remember because Sun was having a hard time. PCs were working their way up to the capabilities that Sun had and Apollo. Apollo was actually before Sun by 2 years, but so we had, multitasking, multiprocessing after a few years, graphical user interface, mice, touchpads, all that jazz, networking, and PCs started down here. And PCs in those days were constant price machines. They were always like there were these price levels. A PC was a $2,000 PC, a $1,000 PC, and then finally they come out with like a $800 PC, something like that. Whereas workstations started at $150,000. I mean, when the first one, and our job was to get the price down. And what I said is, And the PC's job was to get the feature set up. Now they had a target. In other words, we had all the features that they wanted, and they had the price that we wanted. And what I said, and our features didn't change very much. I mean, we added audio, big deal. I mean, we added the graphics. We would do evolutionary things, not revolutionary things with the workstations. Anyways, my point is, I wrote a paper in '94, and I could dig it up somewhere, where I said when those two things cross, we're screwed. Because the PC, I mean, we, the workstation company, because we'll have brought our price down and we'll meet with them, but they've got the mindset of always adding. And we don't have a mindset of adding features. And so they're going to eclipse us. And pretty soon they'll just have all these features, and we will have gotten down to their price. But that's it. We don't have the mindset to continue to add. We just don't. We make things, anyways.
Quentin, this has been a really interesting conversation. So just two questions. Do you mind if I put this up on a YouTube video? Because I think that went really well.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I'll be a little embarrassed, but it'll be fine. Yeah.
I think people are going to love. They're going to love you. And the second question is, what would you say to people who don't have the kind of knowledge that or skills? Because I can see you know what you're talking about when it comes to investments. I mean, you're way ahead of most people. What would you say to the average Joe who's just starting out? He's maybe 18 or 20, got a bit of money. What would you say? What would you advise him to do with his money? Would you tell him to keep it in cash or buy something?
Well, I mean, the first thing so first of all, I mean, the average person, in my opinion, doesn't save. So, I mean, before you can invest anything, you've got to be able to save, right? I mean, some people will end up with money because they got a big stock, whatever, and they'll get a big thing of money, but in the rest of their life, the rest of the kind of the normal life, they'll just piss through it over time. You know what I mean? So I mean, yeah, there's going to be a level you can't save because you just make too little, but you've got to come into this mindset that I have to spend less than I make. And that also helps. I think you can help that along by investing in something that'll give you a lower cost lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like if you own a house, maybe you'll buy solar so that you can, not pay for heat and electricity, so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. Saving, you got to think like a saver. And then investing, I think, the old adage, if you're young, you can take risks. That doesn't mean you can bet on lottery tickets, but you can take more risk and not worry about the markets going down. I do think you have to worry about the markets a lot, though, because there have been a lot of years with the markets, I mean, way back, 1929, 1980s, where the markets were kind of flat all the time. So, but yeah, I'd say you want to save and invest, not crazy. In fact, I think until you learn enough, you should give it to somebody and once you get enough that somebody will care to deal with it, give it to an actual advisor and learn from the advisor is what I'd say. I mean, talk to them, see what their philosophy is. In fact, interview advisors. I had two advisors at one point because they had different philosophies, and I would talk to them both. I wouldn't say that guy's better than that girl, but I'd take in what they said and I try to learn. And so and then keep learning. And then at some point, and learn your risk tolerance is the most important thing, because I think people, and everybody's risk tolerance is different. People will go and bet the farm and then they'll lose sleep because the farm isn't producing milk or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like and if you can't deal with not producing milk for some short amount of time, you got to get out of the dairy business. You know what I mean? You got to be what's the saying? You don't want to be
you want to be within your risk tolerance.
Yeah, and you've got to know it. A lot of people don't know it.
There's something I always say is when you're starting out, and in fact, even if you're an experienced investor like me, I still do this. When I want to buy a position, I only buy 1/3 of what my plan is, where my final position will end up. And that way, after I bought that 1/3, I can start to learn how I feel about it. do I feel that I shouldn't have done it, or do I feel that because it's gone down, it's an even greater investment, or do I feel because it's gone down, I made a mistake? And depending on how I feel, I can then react accordingly. But if it's only one third, you don't have to worry too much.
Right.
Because if it doubles, you don't say, "Well, it's 100% profit. I'll take I want to take the money," because that profit isn't big enough at 100%. So you can let it go on and double again and double again. You end up with a 5 or 10 bagger. Whereas the most you can lose, of course, if you get it wrong, is 100%. And if you only bought 30% of what you planned to buy, the worst you could happen to you is you lose a third amount of the amount that you wanted to spend.
Right. No, that's a good philosophy. I always feel, but from my perspective, because I tend to buy on dips, I don't expect the dip to go through the roof the next day. So that would probably work. But I would always feel bad that and again, I usually just set a target and put a limit order in, and then it hits or it doesn't hit. Sometimes it never hits. A lot of times it never hits. So, my target companies. But anyways, but I
So
like your.
if I summarize your message for everybody who's watching, it's to spend less than you earn and
Yeah.
invest wisely.
And learn about yourself. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Wisely.
And understand your risk tolerance.
Yeah. Right. To me, that's
Quentin, stay on the line for a second. I'm going to stop recording now.
sure.